Baylor's shiny new sports car might have trouble starting up sometimes, but boy, when it's going, it is going. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by 5 Hour Energy and part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show, powered by Rogue Media Sports Network, here to talk to you about the 1-0 Baylor Bears. But was it all flawless? No. We're going to talk about the performance of Dequan Finn in his debut as Baylor's quarterback and the awesome analogy that Dave Aranda used for calling the defense again, get out of the way, and how the Bears can get a seat at the cool kids table in the cafeteria. You'll see what I mean. I think of Dequan Finn and I think of California. I don't know that he's ever been to California. He's from Detroit. He went to Toledo, and now he's in Texas. But I think of California because wouldn't we all want to live in California? It's beautiful. It's some of the most perfect weather in the world. There's sunshine every day. The stars are there. It's all great. But every once in a while, you get an earthquake. Or every once in a while, you got to pay, $6 a gallon for gas. Or the taxes are outrageous. There's ups and there's downs. And that's what I think of with Dequan Finn. The ups are great. Take a trip to California. It's beautiful. You're like, why don't I live here? This is awesome. It's awesome every day. But with that comes the caveats, which we saw in Dequan Finn's 2 interceptions in the game against Tarleton State on Saturday. This is what you are going to get. That's what I have been convinced of. That's what I have had ruminating in my head the last 24 hours is you get the good with the bad. You want to have a fun job, it's probably not going to pay as much. Or you do make a lot of money, well, it's coming out in taxes. You got your good, you got your bad. Dequan Finn, on the first series of the game, showed you the very good, the 39-yard touchdown run. He also threw a couple of picks, and it could have been more. There were some times in the game on Saturday where I thought he looked an indecisive passer, and one who didn't have the arm strength to compete at the highest level of college football. Then again, there was only a little bit of the playbook being shown. Richard Reese said after the game in the post-game interviews that he estimates they only showed about 50 to 60% of the offensive playbook in week 1 against Tarleton. They didn't need to do much. But on Dequan Finn's 2 picks, I thought, when did he show you guys this in practice? Because it just looked like he didn't have the arm strength to make those throws. One of them he throws into double coverage at the goal line. Well, actually, both of them he threw into double coverage at the goal line. But the first one, he is extending a play. He's got a guy open in the flat, but that was on the other side. And Richard Reese, he has a guy in the back of the end zone. Instead, goes to Michael Trigg towards the pylon. It's double coverage. It's 3 or 4 yards short. It's intercepted. The other one, he has Jamal Bell, the Nevada transfer, running open. It's not a huge window, but he's open. And if Finn throws it again about 4 or 5 yards deeper, Jamal Bell can get that separation and make what would have been a touchdown catch. Instead, there's safety help. It's underthrown. The safety makes the play on the ball that if it had been a few yards more downfield, the safety had no chance to get to, and Jamal Bell had a step on his corner. He should have thrown probably 2 more. And it's one that I would say in Big 12 play against better defenses in those same throws, he probably throws 2 more interceptions. And then we're talking about a 4-interception night, and we're talking about a disaster. That's not going to work against Big 12 teams. Thankfully for Baylor, it was not against a Big 12 team. And you look at the numbers, and you think Cam's overblowing this here because he had a pretty decent night. And he did. I mean, you look at just the raw numbers of it, 14 for 22. He's just under 200 yards, which I would have liked a little bit more in terms of that category for, yards per completion. But again, it's not terribly complete. 64% of his passes, a rating of almost 150. he is going to win you games by himself almost. I don't know that he's necessarily going to lose you games, but he might put you in some bad spots with that decision-making that you saw in week 1. But the Bears did win the game. They won it pretty comfortably. They won it by 42 points, and they did not show a lot of what they're going to show on offense. So let's ask the head coach, Dave Aranda, what he thought about Dequan Finn's debut as the Baylor quarterback.
I thought there was really good things. I thought the leadership he brings, the confidence he brings. You know, Dequan's a dog, man. And so you put something in front of him, he's going to knock that down. He's going to run right through the face of the thing, you know. And he's going to bring that attitude right from the beginning. And so that's really cool to see, and I think that our team feeds off of that. Our team sees that. That's stuff that you really can't fake, you know. I thought his performance tonight, there was good and bad, I think, with all of us, you know. And I think moving forward, we're going to continue to feature and develop the things that he does really well, try to limit some of those things that he's struggling with and improve those things to a certain degree. But I'm way confident with Dequan at the helm and just his ability to lead the team, his ability to move the ball. I thought there's a couple times scrambling around, he could have just took off and ran more. And that's probably something we're going to look at.
So he's got dog. And you can't teach dog, guys. I mean, you can go through the years, even the last 10 or so, and there's been a mix of Baylor quarterbacks who have had that dog. Bryce Petty, Nick Florence, if you want to go back, obviously RG3, Seth Russell, Charlie Brewer, Gary Bohannon. They had the dog. There's some guys who didn't. I'm thinking about Zach Smith. I'm thinking about Blake Shapen to a certain extent. You can't teach it. You either have it or you don't. So I like hearing that. And the other thing I really liked hearing was Dave saying Dequan could have ran a little bit more, because that's something I was concerned about coming into this game and still will be in this season, is how much they are going to want him to run. Because in Dave Aranda's tenure, that has not been, except for Gary Bohannon, that's something he hasn't wanted his quarterbacks to do. I thought Blake Shapen could get out of the pocket and scramble a little bit more, but that's something they did not want from him. It was evident. You could see it. Dequan Finn, that's where he might be at his very best, is when he is scrambling or even design runs, which he had a lot of at Toledo. So I was happy to hear that from Dave, saying he could have done it a little bit more, because that first pick that was going to Michael Trigg in the end zone should have been one that he kept and ran. If he had stayed in the pocket, he could have checked down to Richard Reese in the flat, who was open. It could have been a couple of yards, something better than nothing, better than a pick. And he ends up rolling out to the right, where I think he had some room to run, and he could have kept running. So I like that the coaching staff is going to encourage him to run a little bit more. That's where Dequan is at his best. The other thing, it is a new offense for him. We say it all the time. Game speed is much different than practice speed. And so that's where you see some of the miscommunications. There was one on 4th down and goal in the end zone in the second half where Josh Cameron and he were not on the same page. Pass was way behind him. There was another one on what looked like an option route that was a pick that was called back for defensive holding, that he was going to Monterey Baldwin down the sideline. Instead of cutting in, Baldwin was looking kind of back shoulder, which was a play they had scored on earlier with Ashton Hawkins. And it looked like that one was on the receiver, because Dallas Baker just lit into Monterey Baldwin on the field. He couldn't believe that he didn't run the right route. And so there's a little bit to take from it in terms of they didn't show all that was on the playbook. It was the first game for these guys. There is going to be a little bit of that rust. It's going to be very interesting to see next week what works and what doesn't for Dequan Finn, what they're encouraging him to do and what they're discouraging him to do. Because in the moment, in the game on Saturday, I had a couple moments there where I was like, he doesn't look right. He doesn't look like he is on tonight. And I was wondering what we were going to have from Dequan Finn, but there were some big-time plays in the first half. There are ups and downs that you are going to have with this quarterback. But the good news is I think the ups are better than the ups that they had at quarterback the last few years. I'll put it that way. So Dequan Finn, a passing grade, but yeah, to me, there are definitely some things to work on before heading into the conference schedule. And that starts with a non-conference game this week in Utah. All right, y'all, it is Monday. You've got a huge to-do list to go on throughout the week. And so there's only one suggestion that I have for you, and that is our friends over at 5 Hour Energy, okay? It fixes tired fast. Whether you have a long to-do list for work or a bunch of DIY projects for home, take a 5 Hour Energy shot so you can check everything off your list. If you're like me, you always have a lot of lists, a lot of projects going. So when you get your supplies for the project or get everything that you need, do not forget the most essential supply, which is a 5 Hour Energy shot. With 0 sugar and a convenient portable size, it is the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. 5 Hour Energy website has so many flavors: watermelon, tropical burst grape, so much more. And on the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it's going to be delivered right to your door. So go to 5hourenergy.com. That is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today. You can use my promo code, which is LOCKEDONCFB, to receive 20% off your order. Now, this offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good for subscription orders, but that is the promo code LOCKEDONCFB at 5hourenergy.com. The biggest positive from Baylor in week 1 was the defense. Absolutely. Before we get into how good they were, I fully understand the context of this. I fully understand they were playing an FCS team. A good one, but an FCS team. I also understand that they did not have their starting quarterback on said FCS team. And Todd Whitten said before the game, they're going to roll both backups to kind of see who the backup really was. So you could argue a second and third string. That would make some sense. So I understand. I get it. But as we talked about on Friday's show, there were some dudes on this Tarleton team. They didn't play quarterback, but there are some very good skill position players on this team for Tarleton. And the Baylor defense held them in check. Darius Cooper, All-American receiver, 2 catches for 44 yards. 5 yards after the catch. Non-factor. Kevon Britton, who ran for 160 yards in week 1, or week 0, I should say, their first game. 13 attempts for 68. Over 5 yards a carry, but really got it on one long run that went for 30 yards. Other than that, not a factor in the game. And you can only play the quarterbacks that are in front of you. Jaden Pete started the game for Tarleton. 0 of 2, completed more passes to Baylor than he did to his own team, and a negative 100 quarterback rating. Let me say that again. A negative 100 quarterback rating. Threw a touchdown for Baylor, actually. So that's what you can go off of. You can also go off of the fact that Tarleton was held to under 200 yards of total offense. You can also go off the fact that Baylor held them to 2 of 14 on third down and just 9 first downs for the entire game for a team that held the ball for 31 minutes. That is a good look for this Baylor defense. And of course, as we all know now, it was a new defensive coordinator out there. Kind of. Matt Powledge is still the defensive coordinator, but the new defensive play caller is the great Dave Aranda, the guy who had top 5 defenses galore. One time had the number 2 total defense in the nation when he was the DC at Wisconsin, won a national championship as the DC at LSU. The guy can call a defense. Okay? Don't believe me? Let's ask Jackie Marshall. Here's what he had to say about his head coach calling the defense.
What did it seem like with Dave in there, calling plays again, and how did that seem on the sideline, having him into that part of it and locked in? What was that like?
I think it's great. To me, he's the GOAT. Yeah. I think everybody really cares for him, and we just want to play green. Yeah.
He's the GOAT, some would say. Some that play defensive end for Baylor would say. By the way, I did misquote Jackie Marshall on Twitter, so I hope that doesn't get my credential taken away, but I thought he said we want to play great for him, but what he did say is we want to play green. So still that Dave Aranda terminology hasn't run dry on these guys. It's up in the Fudge Center too. Play green. They didn't play green very much last year, especially defensively. That is playing without limits, doing the right things, but doing them at 100% speed and without being tight and without any indecisiveness. And that's what it did look like in this game on Saturday. By the way, Jackie Marshall. Jackie Marshall, guys. I am so glad this guy is back. You could have used him last year. I mean, I thought he was the best defensive player on the field for Baylor on Saturday. Caden Jenkins played really well, as evidenced by the fact that you didn't hear his name a lot. That's what the great corners do. You didn't hear his name a lot. You saw Darius Cooper having no production, and a lot of times he was actually on the other side of the field. Caden Jenkins was terrific, I thought, in the game. Keaton Thomas was running out there like a chicken with his head cut off in the best possible way. He has the pick six, which, by the way, Dave Aranda said after the game, Keaton had his worst 2 days of practice since he was here on Wednesday and Thursday. And Dave told him, kind of calmed him down before the game. And lo and behold, he goes out there and gets a pick six. But Jackie Marshall, I thought, was dominant in this game. If you have the chance when you're at a game, or if you can catch it on TV, watch Zero. Watch Jackie Marshall. Just take a defensive series and just watch him. Don't watch the play. Just watch him. He was a problem. They couldn't block him. He drew a couple of holding calls. He had a couple of TFLs. I thought he was terrific in this game, and he was in such game mode that if you're watching on YouTube, you could see he went to the post-game presser, and he still had his gloves on. Man, he was ready to keep playing. I loved what we saw from Jackie Marshall in this game. In fact, what we did see from him specifically was 7 total tackles, 4 of them by himself, only gets credited for a half tackle for loss and a QB hurry. If you're going to get that out of him, then you are going to have a much improved defensive line because he draws so much attention to that side. Anyway, this segment's about Dave Aranda. So let's hear what Dave Aranda had to say about getting out there, getting in his element, and calling the defensive plays himself.
I was angry a lot of times. You don't want to give people anything, and obviously they're always going to get things. I think, we had an academic. There's a professor that comes to the dinner on last night, Friday night, and so they'll come to the walkthrough, and then they'll be at practice. Or they'll be at the walkthrough, then they'll be at the dinner Friday night, and they asked that question, and it's I think how I said it then was like, man, it's like you're a fighter pilot, you get this great fighter jet, and it's all this all this stuff, and it's got all these weapons, and you get to fly the thing, but there's people out there that want to kill you, and so like you get to fly it, but you don't want to die, and so that's how I feel about calling plays. I feel that all the time. And I think, to prep and to do all the stuff right to where you can get people and then they don't get you, that's hard to do in today's game. Offenses are really good.
Dave Aranda, the fighter pilot. That's what I like. He got there. It was a little confusing at first. He took a while to get there, but it was an analogy we understood. He's got the weapons. He's got the turrets, whatever it is. He's got all this in front of him, but there are people trying to bring you down. Many men. They are trying to shoot down your plane. And I also like what he said at the beginning of it. I was angry a lot of the time. I'm taking angry Dave Aranda over passive Dave Aranda any day of the week. And I know it's Tarleton. I know it was a backup quarterback, and they got a big test this weekend with Utah and Cam Rising. But again, I am all for Dave Aranda calling the defensive plays. This is a guy who's in his element. Everyone you talk to that has been around him, whether it's a commentator like Pete Souza, whether it's another coach like Gary Patterson, whether it's people who are just observing practice, they all say the same thing. Even Dave said this about his former coaches that he worked with. He reached out to them, and they all said the same thing. You are in your element when you're calling defense. You are at your best when you are calling the defense. It doesn't mean you can't be a good head coach, but when you are just trying to be the head coach and not the defensive guy, the defensive genius that you are, you're not at your best. We are going to see Dave Aranda at his best this year, and we'll see what he can do with this unit, because There are some pieces here. I like the linebacker unit. That I liked it better than I liked it last year with Keaton Thomas in there. I love having Jackie Marshall back. I like having a true nose tackle again. Cooper Lands was listed as the starter, but it looks like it's going to be Linus Noel, who played the lion's share. So I like all of that. So give Dave Aranda all the guns and the ammo that you would have on the fighter jet, and I think he's going to get it done. And you are going to need all of that to get to bowl eligibility. You need the ups of Dequan Finn. You need Dave Aranda, the fighter pilot, to be firing on all cylinders. And there's another thing you need if Baylor's going to have a successful season. And it's less tangible. It's less on the field. We're going to talk about that next. All right, do you want to be the fighter pilot? Do you want to be Dave Aranda out there? Well, I've got the game for you. It's called Ultimate College Football Head Coach. It's a simulation game. You get to step in the shoes of Dave Aranda and lead Baylor to glory. Seriously, you get to be the fighter pilot. From recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and handling scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle the pressure? We're going to find out. And here's what I really love about the game. You're responsible for calling the offensive plays. Your strategy, it's not only going to determine the success of your football season, but it's also going to shape the future and the legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can play it on the go as you want and when you want to. And of course, we have a special offer for you guys. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store. Receive a free boost to your program. So make sure to take advantage of that. To download the game, go to ultimate-cfb.com or look it up in the App Store. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. There was something that I was impressed with. Another thing I was impressed with in the game on Saturday, and that was the student turnout. Look, it needs to be a culture thing again for Baylor football fans and Baylor students to say, I don't care how bad the team is or what it was like last year. This is what we do at Baylor on Saturdays. We go to the football games. And it was a lot of built-in excuses in there. The team was 3-9 last year. They're playing Tarleton State. It's really hot. It's Labor Day weekend. I can go home. First off, why would you want to go home? College is funner than home. Go home at Christmas and Thanksgiving, okay? All of those excuses built in, and yet it was an awesome student turnout. The rest of the stadium, they used those other excuses that I put out there. Some of it, anyway, that side that I could see on the sun away from the press box. But the student turnout was terrific, man. And Dave Aranda echoed something in the press conference that I have long said, and a lot of you long thought. When McLean is going, it is an awesome, awesome atmosphere. It's one of those ones that can't be faked. You know, if it's 75% full, it's not going to feel great at all. But when it's full and it's going, it is rocking. And that's what Dave Aranda had to say about the atmosphere and what Baylor has to do to get it back to where it needs to be.
When McLean is rocking, it's really, really special. And you could see that with just our staff. You know, I think today was kind of a first start. I think for our fans, you know, we're going to have to win some games so that we can be cool enough to hang out with, you know. And so we have to be able to win some games, I think, and get some people to sit at our table, you know, at lunch, you know. But I think, like, when it's going like that and it's rolling that way, it's as good as it gets. And so the engagement of all of it, I think today was a start. We got work to do there.
Baylor football has a conundrum I know all too well. You've got to be cool to get people to hang out with you. And for Baylor football, it means we got to win some games. We got to have a better year than last year. We got to be exciting. And then people will come and sit with us at lunch. Trust me, Dave, I get it. I get it. Ask anyone at Rockland High. I get it. It's a lot of work, okay? But I'm glad that it's something that the head coach just comes out and acknowledges. You know, it basically saying, we get it. You know, we didn't have a good year last year. We didn't put a good enough product on the field for it to be a full house every time, even in college football, where I think you should go out and support your alma mater no matter what. We were 3-9. We're working on it. And we did have a good student turnout tonight, and we're going to get the fans to come and celebrate with us. Had a night game, which helps. Got a night game in a couple of weeks against Air Force. And then after that, you've got conference football. And by that point, hopefully, Baylor will show something to you and will win some games so that you can go out there and say, of course, we're going to the Baylor football game. What else would we be doing around here on a Saturday? Because that's what it needs to be again. I've said this a few thousand times, so I know you guys have heard this before. But when I was in school, not all that long ago, and the end of the Art Briles era and through some mid teams after that, there was like no question what you were doing on Saturday. Of course you were going to the game. Monday at 4:00, the campus shut down so you could go and buy your student tickets. And we need to win enough and be exciting enough for that to happen again. But man, it was fun to be back out there on Saturday. Probably as good a weather situation as you could ask for in August in Waco, Texas. It didn't get over 100. In fact, there was a nice stiff breeze in there. It was beautiful. I got to see so many people. A lot of fans from Locked On Baylor, which I did not expect. But it's always appreciated. People coming up to me after we did the tailgate show with Matt Mosley, the kickoff show, actually, I should say, from 2 to 4 in Touchdown Alley. Every home game, come and check it out. But had some people coming up to me saying they loved the show, had some people associated with the team and associated with some of the players, and a lot of you just fans. So I really appreciate that, guys. It truly, it means a lot. I never expect it. And there are some days where I'm like, is anybody listening? But you guys keep showing up, and the numbers are even going to get better during the football season. So I really appreciate you guys. Definitely come by and say hi for that next game against Air Force, which is in a couple weeks. We're going to have a full Utah breakdown and preview throughout this week as we get prepared for that big conference, non-conference matchup. But I want to know what you guys think. As always, seriously, let me know what you thought were the positives or the negatives from this week 1 win against Tarleton. How many negatives can you find in a 45-3 win? You can find a couple. I'd love to hear it. Drop that down in the comment section below. What you want us to address this week as we look forward to, as we close the book on Tarleton and look forward to Utah, which we will start doing in the next couple days here. But be sure to like and subscribe, ring that notification bell on YouTube to get notified whenever we're dropping a show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much for making it your first listen today and every day. We will see you tomorrow on your favorite program, Locked On Baylor.